Bitcoin is trading at $68,000 today. Michael Saylor's MicroStrategy bought at an average of $76,000. That means right now, at this very moment, you can buy Bitcoin $8,000 cheaper than the most famous institutional investor in the world. $8,000 cheaper. Think about that for a moment. The same asset, the same network, the same future, just $8,000 less than what one of the most sophisticated investors on the planet paid. And yet most people are doing nothing, worse than nothing. They're worried, they're anxious, they're checking prices every hour, reading endless threads, watching video after video, asking the same questions over and over. Is this the top? Should I wait for a dip? Is Bitcoin stuck? Is it over? Should I sell? Should I buy? Should I do nothing? I've been watching Bitcoin since 2013. That's 13 years of paying attention. I've seen it at $100. I've seen it at $1,000. I've seen it at $10,000. I've seen it at $60,000. I've seen it crash back to $16,000. I've watched it get declared dead more than 400 times by people who didn't understand what they were looking at. I've watched governments try to ban it. I've watched banks try to kill it. I've watched experts laugh at it. And through all of that noise, through all of that chaos, through all of that fear, I've learned something that most people never understand, something that separates those who build wealth from those who just watch it pass them by. Price is a distraction, value is the destination. Today, I'm going to give you something that took me 13 years and billions of dollars in transactions to learn. 3 things you should do right now. Not because I'm guessing, not because I'm hoping, but because I've watched this exact situation play out multiple times: 2014, 2018, 2020, 2022. Every time Bitcoin hit a plateau, every time it felt stuck, the same patterns emerged. And every single time, the people who did these 3 things ended up in a completely different place from the people who didn't. Before we go further, I need to tell you something that I wish someone had told me in 2016. I was sitting exactly where you are right now. Bitcoin was stuck at $600. I was confused. I was uncertain. I almost made a decision that would have cost me everything I've built since then. And the only thing that saved me was one conversation, one person who explained things in a way that made it click, one perspective shift that changed everything. This could be that conversation for you. So take a moment, hit that subscribe button right now. Not for me, for your future self. The version of you watching this in 2030 will thank the version of you who just pressed subscribe. Do it now. Good. Let's begin. Look at the chart. Bitcoin hit $69,000 in November 2021. The whole world was celebrating. Then it crashed to $16,000. 80% of its value disappeared. People lost everything. Funds collapsed. Exchanges went bankrupt. They wrote obituaries for crypto. They said it was over. They said it was never coming back. And now, 4 years later, it's back at $68,000, almost exactly where it was in 2021. 4 years, zero progress, or so it seems. Or in 2013, Bitcoin hit $1,100 for the first time. Then it crashed to $200. It stayed down for years. In 2017, 4 years later, it hit $19,000. And people said it's been 4 years and it's only at $19,000. This is nothing. This is finished. Then 2021 happened. Then 2024 happened. Then we arrived at today. Here's what the charts don't show you. This digital asset has outperformed every other asset on Earth over the last decade. Not stocks, not real estate, not gold, not bonds, not tech companies, not venture capital. Bitcoin alone at the top by a margin so wide it's not even close. And yet every time it pauses, every time it breathes, every time it takes a rest after a long run, people panic. They lose faith. They sell their future for a moment of comfort. In 2016, Bitcoin was stuck at $600 for months. People sold in frustration. They said it's over. The magic is gone. I'm moving on. Those people aren't in this room today. They're not watching this video because they stopped caring years ago. But the ones who held, the ones who bought more while everyone else was selling, they're the ones who transformed their lives completely. So why does $68,000 feel like a trap? Why does your gut tell you something is wrong? 3 reasons. First, recency bias. You remember the crash. You remember $16,000. You remember watching your portfolio shrink day after day. You remember the fear. You remember the regret. Your brain is wired to protect you from danger. So it's screaming at you right now. It's saying, what if it goes back down? What if you buy today and tomorrow it crashes again? What if you lose everything? But here's what your primitive brain doesn't understand. Every single time Bitcoin has crashed, it has come back higher. Not sometimes, not usually, every single time. 2011 crashed 93%. They said it was over. It came back 50,000%. 2014 crashed 80%. They said it was finished. It came back 12,000%. 2018 crashed 84%. They said crypto was dead forever. It came back 3,000%. 2022 crashed 75%. They said this time was different because of inflation, because of regulation, because of FTX, because of 1,000 reasons. It came back 400% so far. The pattern isn't Bitcoin crashes and dies. The pattern is Bitcoin crashes and then explodes. If you don't understand that pattern, $68,000 looks like a danger zone. If you do understand it, $68,000 looks like a sale. The same number, the same price, completely different meanings based entirely on your perspective. Second, you're waiting for the perfect entry. I see this all the time. Every single day in comments, in messages, in conversations with people who reach out for advice. I'll wait for 50,000. I'll buy when it drops to 40,000. I'm waiting for 30,000. Then I'll go all in. Let me ask you something. In 2017, people said, I'll wait for $10,000. Bitcoin went to 19,000. They said, I'll wait for 15,000. It crashed to 3,000. They said, see, I told you, I was right to wait. Then it went to 69,000. They're still waiting. The perfect entry doesn't exist. It's a ghost. It's a fantasy. It's what people tell themselves so they don't have to make a decision. Because making a decision means accepting risk. Making a decision means being accountable. Making a decision means you might be wrong. And for most people, the fear of being wrong is stronger than the desire to be right. I made this mistake in 2015. I was watching Bitcoin at $200, convinced it would drop to 150. I waited and waited and waited. It never hit 150. It went to 220, 250, 300. I finally bought at $300 instead of 200. That mistake cost me nothing. Absolutely nothing. Because $300 Bitcoin is now $68,000 Bitcoin. Stop waiting for perfection. Perfection is the enemy of progress. Perfection is the reason people paid $50,000 for a house that's now worth $1 million and wish they'd bought two. Perfection is the reason people watched Amazon stock for 20 years and never bought a single share. Perfection is a trap, and you're standing right on top of it. Third, and this is the big one, the one that separates winners from watchers forever, you don't have a framework. You're looking at price without understanding value. You're looking at today without understanding tomorrow. You're looking at a single tree and calling it the entire forest. When I look at Bitcoin, I don't see $68,000. I see a network with a $1.2 trillion market cap. I see 300 million users worldwide. I see institutional adoption accelerating every single day. I see sovereign wealth funds quietly buying. I see pension funds allocating percentages they would never have considered 5 years ago. I see countries exploring Bitcoin as legal tender, as a reserve asset, as a hedge against the endless printing of fiat currency. Do you know what happens when a sovereign wealth fund decides to put just 1% of their assets in Bitcoin? Just 1%. They have to buy $50 billion worth of Bitcoin. $50 billion. And there are only 21 million Bitcoin forever. That's it. That's the whole supply. 21 million coins for the entire world, for every country, every corporation, every individual, for all of eternity. So when I see Bitcoin at $68,000, I don't think, is this the top? I don't think, should I wait for a dip? I think, how much will this be worth when sovereign wealth funds, pension funds, endowments, corporations, and eventually entire countries are fighting over the last remaining coins? I think, how much will this be worth when the supply shock hits and demand is still climbing? And that's the framework you need. Not, is it going up tomorrow, but will it be higher in 5 years? Not, can I time this perfectly? But do I want to own this asset for the rest of my life? If the answer is yes, then $68,000 isn't a question. It's an answer. It's an opportunity disguised as uncertainty. So those are the 3 reasons $68,000 feels stuck. Recency bias, the perfect entry fantasy, the lack of a framework. But understanding the problem is only half the battle. The real question is, what do you do about it? I'm going to give you 3 things, not opinions, not guesses, not theories from Twitter. 3 actions based on 13 years of watching this market and billions of dollars in transactions. Actions I've taken myself. Actions that have changed lives, including my own. Here's the first thing you should do right now. Step 1, change your time horizon. Most people look at crypto with a 1 day, 1 week, or 1 month time horizon. They check prices every hour. They panic at every 2% dip. They celebrate at every 3% pump. They're emotional wrecks riding a roller coaster that goes nowhere. This is not investing. This is gambling with extra steps. This is sitting at a slot machine and pulling the lever over and over, hoping this time will be different, and the house always wins. When I bought Bitcoin for my company, I didn't buy it for next week. I didn't buy it for next year. I bought it for the next decade. I bought it with the complete understanding that in 10 years, this asset would be worth more than it is today. Not because I can predict the future, but because I understand the mathematics of scarcity in a world of infinite money printing. Look at the numbers. If you bought Bitcoin in 2014 and sold in 2015, you lost money. If you bought in 2014 and sold in 2017, you made 10 times your money. If you bought in 2014 and sold in 2021, you made 100 times your money. If you bought in 2014 and held until today, the numbers speak for themselves. The same asset, the same purchase, the same dollar amount invested, completely different outcomes. The only variable is time, not intelligence, not timing, not luck. Time. Time is the investor's greatest weapon. Time is what turns a good investment into a great one. Time is what allows compound growth to work its magic. Time is what separates those who build wealth from those who just trade it back and forth until it's gone. Let me give you a simple way to think about it. There are 3 levels of involvement in this market. Level 1 is the trader. Time horizon, days or weeks. Goal, quick profits. Reality, most lose money, not because they're stupid, because they're playing a game that can't be won. They're trying to predict the unpredictable, time the untimable, catch falling knives, and ride rockets at the exact right moment. It's exhausting, it's expensive, and it almost never works. Level 2 is the investor. Time horizon, years. Goal, wealth building. Reality, most succeed. Why? Because they've stopped trying to be clever. They've accepted that they can't predict next week, but they can predict next decade. They buy quality assets and they hold them. They ignore the noise. They sleep at night. Level 3 is the architect, time horizon, decades, goal, generational wealth. Reality, they always win. These are the people who don't just own assets. They build systems. They create structures that outlast them. They think in terms of inheritance, not income. They're playing a game so big that short-term fluctuations don't even register. Most people are stuck at level 1. They're trying to predict what happens next week, and they're losing because nobody can predict next week. Not me, not you, not the smartest trader on earth, nobody. But here's what I can predict. In 10 years, there will be more people on earth, more money printed, more debt, more inflation, more need for assets that can't be printed into oblivion, and there will still only be 21 million Bitcoin. That's not a prediction. That's math, that's physics, that's certainty. In 2016, I had a conversation that changed everything. I was looking at Bitcoin at $600, thinking, should I take profits? Should I sell? Should I lock in gains while I still can? I called someone older, someone who had been through multiple market cycles. He said something I'll never forget. He said, Michael, in 10 years, will you care if you sold at 600 or 700? Or will you care that you owned Bitcoin at all? That hit me hard because he was right. The difference between selling at 600 and 700 was nothing. The difference between owning and not owning was everything. That's when I stopped being a trader and started being an architect. That's when I stopped asking, what's the price, and started asking, what's the value? That's when I bought and never looked back. Today, I'm not telling you to buy or sell. I'm telling you to ask yourself the same question. In 10 years, will you care that you bought at 68,000 or 60,000, or will you care that you bought at all? Let me address what you're probably thinking right now. You're thinking, but if I wait for 60,000, I'll get more Bitcoin for the same money. That's mathematically true, but psychologically, it's a trap because while you're waiting for 60,000, one of 3 things happens. 1, it never hits 60,000. It goes to 100,000. You wait forever, then buy at the top out of fear of missing out. You're now the person who bought at 100,000 and watched it drop to 70,000. 2, it hits 60,000, but now you're waiting for 50,000 and 40,000 and 30,000. You become the person who's always waiting, never buying, forever watching from the sidelines. 3, it hits 60,000, you buy, and it drops to 50,000. Now you panic, you sell, you lose, you blame crypto, you tell everyone it's a scam. All 3 outcomes are worse than just buying at 68,000 and holding for 5 years. Why? Because time in the market beats timing the market. every single time. There's a famous study from a major investment bank. They looked at 20 years of stock market returns. You know what they found? If you missed the 10 best days in those 20 years, your returns were cut in half. If you missed the 30 best days, your returns were zero. Now think about Bitcoin. Bitcoin's best days often come out of nowhere. A random Tuesday, a holiday weekend, 3 in the morning on a Sunday. You can't predict them. You can't time them. You can only be there. You can't hit a home run from the bench. So the first thing you should do right now is change your time horizon. Stop thinking like a trader. Start thinking like an architect. Build for 10 years, not 10 days. Now let's move to the second thing you should do right now. Step 2, build your conviction. Conviction isn't just believing something is true. Conviction is believing it so deeply that short-term events don't change your behavior. Conviction is what allows you to hold when everyone else is selling. Conviction is what allows you to buy when everyone else is panicking. Most people don't have conviction. They have hope. They hope Bitcoin goes up. They hope they pick the right coin. They hope they sell before the crash. Hope is not a strategy. Hope is wishful thinking, dressed up in optimistic language. Conviction comes from understanding, real understanding. Not surface-level knowledge, but deep foundational comprehension of what you're actually owning. When you buy Bitcoin, what are you actually buying? Are you buying a ticket to a casino game? Are you buying a lottery ticket that might pay off? Or are you buying a piece of the most powerful monetary network in human history? Bitcoin is not a stock. It's not a company. It's not a project with a CEO and employees and quarterly earnings. Bitcoin is a network. It's a protocol. It's money that exists independently of any government, any corporation, any individual. It's the first time in human history that people can transfer value across borders without permission, without intermediaries, without anyone able to stop them. That's not a feature. That's a revolution. When you understand that, really understand it, your relationship with price changes completely. You stop caring whether it's 68,000 or 60,000 or 50,000. You start caring about how much of this network you own. Because you realize that in a world where governments print money without limit, where banks create credit out of thin air, where your savings lose value every single year due to inflation, owning a piece of something that cannot be printed, cannot be inflated, cannot be created out of nothing is not just an investment, it's survival. In 2018, when Bitcoin crashed from 20,000 to 3,000, people with hope sold. People with conviction bought. The ones who sold spent the next 3 years watching from the sidelines. The ones who bought spent the next 3 years watching their portfolios multiply. Same event, same price movement, completely different outcomes based entirely on the level of conviction. I built my conviction by studying, by reading, by understanding the history of money, the nature of inflation, the technology behind Bitcoin. The more I learned, the more confident I became. And the more confident I became, the easier it was to ignore the noise. You need to do the same, not because I'm telling you to, because your future self will thank you. Here's the third thing you should do right now. Step 3, create your system. Hope is not a plan. Conviction without action is just belief. You need a system. You need a way of operating that doesn't depend on your emotions, doesn't depend on the news, doesn't depend on what some influencer said last night. A system is simple. A system answers 3 questions. When do I buy? How much do I buy? When do I sell? For me, the answers are simple. I buy consistently over time. I buy the same amount at regular intervals. I never sell. That's my system. It's not complicated. It doesn't require me to predict anything. It doesn't require me to have strong opinions about where price is going next week. It just requires me to follow the plan. You need your own system. Maybe you buy every week. Maybe you buy every month. Maybe you buy whenever you have extra cash. Maybe you buy more when prices are lower and less when prices are higher. Whatever works for you, but you need a plan. Because without a plan, you're just reacting. And reacting is how people lose money. In 2020, when COVID hit and Bitcoin crashed 50% in 2 days, people without systems panicked. People with systems bought. The people with systems are the ones who turned that crash into life-changing wealth. The people without systems are the ones who sold at the bottom and spent the next year trying to get back in at higher prices. A system removes emotion from the equation. A system turns investing from a source of anxiety into a source of peace. A system allows you to sleep at night while others are lying awake worrying. So here's what you should do right now. Write down your system. Literally write it on paper. I will buy this much, this often, under these conditions. I will sell only when this happens. Put it somewhere you can see it, and then follow it. No matter what, Through ups and downs, through crashes and rallies, through good news and bad, follow the system. That's how wealth is built. Not by being right about next week, not by timing the perfect entry, not by catching the exact bottom, but by having a plan and sticking to it for years. Let me bring this all together for you. Bitcoin is at $68,000. It feels stuck. It feels uncertain. It feels like maybe the moment has passed. But every single person who has ever built wealth in this market has faced this exact feeling. Every single person who is now in a position they never dreamed possible once sat exactly where you are sitting, wondering exactly what you are wondering. The difference between them and everyone else wasn't luck. It wasn't timing. It wasn't some secret they discovered that no one else knew. The difference was three things. They changed their time horizon. They stopped thinking in days and started thinking in years. They stopped asking what happens tomorrow and started asking what happens in a decade. They built their conviction. They did the work to understand what they were actually owning. They moved from hope to certainty, from wishful thinking to deep comprehension. They created their system. They made a plan and they stuck to it. Through every crash, through every rally, through every moment of fear and every moment of greed, they followed the plan. That's it. That's the secret. That's the difference. Not complicated, not mysterious, just three things that most people never do. So here's what I want you to take from this conversation. Not advice about what to buy or when to sell, not predictions about where price is going next week. Just a question. What kind of investor do you want to be? The kind who spends years watching from the sidelines, waiting for the perfect moment that never comes? The kind who trades frantically, making a little here and losing a little there, never really getting ahead? Or the kind who builds something real, something lasting, something that changes not just your life, but the lives of everyone who comes after you? The choice is yours. It's always been yours. And it starts with what you do right now, today, with Bitcoin stuck at $68,000. Thank you for listening. Thank you for giving me your time. If this conversation was valuable to you, share it with someone you care about, someone who's struggling with the same questions, someone who needs to hear this perspective, because the only thing better than building wealth for yourself is helping the people you love build it too.